Hey, look what I got. Brand new rock tumbler, just what I needed. Hi, I'm Rob, and this is Michigan Rocks. I've been thinking about doing a review of this National Geographic tumbler for a while now. And then a couple weeks ago, Tommy, who's the administrator over at the Rock Tumbling Hobby Forums, he contacted me and asked me if I'd be willing to do a review of the tumbler. So I said, sure. They've been getting a lot of complaints, and I've read a lot of complaints from people who usually buy this as their first tumbler, and then they use it, and the rocks don't come out shiny, and they wonder what the problem is. So I haven't used this yet, but I'm going to test it out and see what happens. In my research for this, I watched a lot of videos, I read a lot of reviews, but the videos I watched were mostly from people who are using this for their very first time. They've never used a tumbler of any sort before, they don't know what they're doing, and they review it. Usually the rocks don't come out shiny. So I've got a lot of experience. I've been tumbling for about 10 years. Even won a contest once, won the Worldwide Rock Tumbling Contest in 2016. So I know how to tumble a rock, and we'll see if I can get this thing to work. So by the way, I'm not sponsored by anybody. I'm not sponsored by National Geographic or Rock Tumbling Hobby or anybody. So let's get this thing open and see what I can do with it. Well, this is everything that's included in the box. So let's start over here with the base. The base is metal. I was kind of surprised. I thought it'd be plastic. It's not very heavy, so the motor in there is not a very big motor. I believe this is a DC motor rather than an AC motor. I also believe it used a little less electricity, but I can't give you specifics on that. It has a timer where you can set the number of days before it turns off. I've never seen that on any other tumbler. All my tumblers they don't even have a switch to turn them on and off. You plug them in and they go. And usually I just leave them running. I've had tumblers running in the basement here for 10 years, pretty much nonstop. I mean, I turn them off once in a while for a little, maybe a repair or a little upkeep or whatever, but for the most part, they just run nonstop. So that's useless in my opinion. It has a speed controller, and we'll talk about that more in just a minute. The rollers here appear to be plastic, either plastic or a very hard rubber. I can't really tell for sure, but they're very hard, whatever they are. There's the power cord. You get an extra belt in case you break a belt over here. Really easy to get to, so that's nice. And then we've got the barrel. This is a 2-pound barrel, according to National Geographic. They actually make 4 tumblers. This one's the professional model. The cheapest tumbler is their starter kit, and that has a little yellow plastic barrel with a rubber liner on the inside. Up from there is the hobby model, and the hobby model is a little nicer base, looks a little bit more like this, but it has a 1-pound barrel that goes on it, but it's a rubber barrel. And then the professional one here has a 2-pound barrel, and then they make one that has an extra large capacity 3-pound barrel. So here's a Lortone barrel. This is the type of tumbler I'm most used to using. I've used a couple brands, but this is my favorite. This is a 3-pound barrel according to Lortone as compared to a 2-pound barrel here. So you can see the diameter, this one's got a much bigger diameter, but it's shorter. So I filled this up with water up to the top of the interior capacity of it, and I poured it into here, and this is just a tad bigger, very, very small difference. So the 3-pound barrel and the 2-pound barrel are actually about the same size. And I actually prefer this larger diameter because it's going to have more weight of the rocks pushing down in the other rocks. It'll make the rocks grind just a little bit faster than the other one, than the Lortone. So the way this works is just like the Lortone design. This outer lid is stainless steel. The Lortone's is aluminum. Don't know that it makes a difference. Neither one rusts, and there's no problem with the aluminum. I'm sure there's no problem with this. Then there's the inner lid. And then the inside of the tumbler has little flat sides, which help the rocks move around a little bit better. The newer Lortone barrels have that. The older ones are just round on the inside. So, barrel looks good. And it's rubber, so it should be pretty quiet. Okay, and then the book is pretty nice. Inside they have, other than instructions, they have a little bit about each of the rocks you get with the tumbler. It's okay information. They have like healing powers for some of the rocks, which I don't like at all because I don't believe rocks have healing powers, but whatever, it's not that big a deal. Then you got your grip packs, And we'll talk more about these later, but this is supposed to be enough to do the rocks that come with the tumbler. This is a tiny amount of grit in my opinion. The coarse grit here, I buy this in 50-pound bags, but we'll talk more about my methods versus what they suggest you do here in the book. Here's the included rocks. The tub didn't come with it, I just put them in the tub so they'd be easier to see. There's a little strainer, and then there's this stuff. This they call gem foam, and it's just these little foam rubber cubes, and you're supposed to use these after you polish them. You do a run with these little cubes in water and just the rocks, so we'll see. I have my doubts about this. I've never heard of gem foam before. It's not something most people use. And then there's just some little jewelry stuff, little necklace. You can put a rock in there, and some little clip pins and things you can glue a rock to. So this is everything that's in the box. Let's take a closer look at the rocks next. All right, here's all the rocks that are included with the tumbler. The first rock we're supposed to have is amethyst, and I could not find any amethyst in the bag. Amethyst is a purple quartz, and there just wasn't any in there. Next rock is rose quartz, which is what this is. It's actually a really nice, nice size piece of it. There's tiny pieces. That's not going to come out of the tumbler. That probably won't survive the tumbler. But it's okay to have it in there. Next we have tiger's eye, and again a really nice piece of tiger's eye. No complaints about that rock. And then sodalite, and I actually checked these with a UV light and they do fluoresce a little bit, so that's the sodalite. Aventurine would be this green rock. And then we have red jasper. And it's supposed to have hematite in it. It has this black rock, and hematite should streak red, and I did a streak test and this streaks gray or black. So I don't know what that is, but it's not hematite. And then what's next? Agate. I imagine this is the agate. So on this one there is a little bit of a band through the middle here. We'll have to see what it looks like when it tumbles up. This has some rock around the outside. That might be agate in the middle there. We'll see. And then Dalmatian jasper, which actually isn't jasper. From what I read, it's feldspar. But anyhow, that's it. And that's it. I did weigh these rocks. This is a 2-pound tumbler, but it's only got 1 pound of rocks here. This is just a hair over 1 pound, so it is what it is. We'll see how it fills up the barrel. I might need to add a few more rocks. We'll find out in a little bit. So let's take a little closer look at this. I'm going to compare this tumbler to a Lortone 33B tumbler. So first thing, it has an on-off switch here. And it has a timer where you can set it from 1 to 9 days. So you just push the little button here, more days or less days. And then there's a speed control. So it's on speed 1. There's speed 2. And there's speed 3. On the Lortone tumbler, we have no buttons. We have a plug. So to get this one to run, I just plug it in. And this one's quieter. Neither one of these have rocks in the barrel. If you put rocks in the barrel, they're going to be louder. But here's what this sounds like. And here's what this sounds like. Part of the problem here, hear that little bumping noise? There's a little seam right along the rollers here, and I can feel a little bump there, and I think it's making, as it's going around, it's bumping on that a little bit. So I'll probably either sand that down or take a little knife and carve that off and make it roll a little bit smoother. But I'd say this one's slightly louder, but neither one of them are very loud. Another thing I want to look at is the speed of these. So I put a piece of tape on here so you can watch it going around. And I want to compare the speed of this to the speed of this. So we'll turn this on. This is on speed 1. This only has 1 speed. This turns at 41 RPMs. And this one is 84 RPM. So it's more than twice as fast. And if I kick it up to the higher speed, the 3rd speed, That's now going at 120 compared to this at 41. So this is now 3 times faster. So what that tells me is a couple things. This is probably going to grind the rocks faster than this one is. But this is also going to be more harmful to the rocks. They're going to be slamming around in there a little more. And if you have stuff like quartz, like that rose quartz in here, or if yours comes with amethyst, it's going to bang those rocks up a lot more than this one's going to. So this is gentler, which is both good and bad. It's good to treat the rocks a little nicer. It's bad because this is going to be a little bit slower than this one is. So I'm going to follow the directions and do what this one tells me to do, and we'll see what happens, and then go from there. All right, let's get this rolling. So my plan here is to follow the directions that come with the tumbler and just comment on what I think of the directions as we go along. I'm not expecting this batch to turn out great, but at least you'll know maybe why they don't. So we've got the rocks here. I put those in. And as I suspected, that's only about half full, if even that. Yeah, I'd say right around half full. I would normally fill up a barrel about 3/4 full. So this is less full than I would usually do it, but I'm just going to go with the directions. They said to fill it up with water so it just covers the rocks. And I got a big rock in there, so I'm going to leave that tipping out the top. This is more water than I would normally use. But then again, this barrel's going really fast, so that might cushion the rocks and help them from slamming around in there and beating each other up too much. And then we've got the step 1 coarse grit. It's going to go in there. I don't know how much is in here, so what I'm going to do is measure it so I kind of have an idea of what they expect you to use. I would normally put 3 tablespoons of grit in here. Oh, by the way, I emailed the company and asked, what is this grit exactly? It just says step 1 coarse on it, so I don't know what that means. They said that's 60 grit and it's silicon carbide. So that's a good choice. That's about what I would use here. And so, see, that's about a tablespoon, a little less maybe. I don't have much more than a tablespoonful of grit in here. I would normally put 3 tablespoons in, so a little cheap on the grit in my opinion. But I'm going to act like I don't know any better and just go with it and see what happens. The lid on. Make sure you get the lid down tight so it's even all the way around. So I was just put quite a bit of weight on it. It seems to go on pretty easily. Put that on. And they said to do this on speed 3, the high speed, and to go for 3 to 5 days. So I'm going to go 5 days and see what happens. I don't know how tight to make that. There, it's tightening up a little bit. And so let's see, what do we have? The speed is here. Put the days on first. There's 5 days. I would just put it on 9 and leave it there all the time probably. Speed 3. Okay. I guess that's full speed, so we'll be back in 5 days to check on it. All right, let's see what we got here. Alright, so there's how the slurry is looking. Normally I run my first stage for 7 days at a time, and every 7 days I check it, and then the rocks usually go back in for multiple weeks. This just says to do it for 3 to 5 days. We went 5, and then check the rocks. And it does say in the book, if you're not happy with a stage, to throw them back in and do them longer. So for, I think it says a couple more days. I want to check this grit and see if it's all used up. The reason I usually go 7 days is because after 7 days, the grit's usually broken down into smaller and smaller pieces until it's not really effective anymore. So if you just reach in, I'm going to reach down to the bottom and feel around, I can't feel any grittiness at all in there. So to put these back in here, that's a mess. To put these back in here, this isn't probably going to do any good. They're not really going to get ground down much more. So with no more grit in the package to put in there, I'm going to assume that most people, if they do put it back in, it doesn't do much good. Most people probably just move it on to the next stage right now. So that's what I'm going to do, even though that's not what I normally would do. I'm going to do that now. So this does not go down your sink. I've got a whole video showing what I do with this. But for right now, I'm going to go over and dump it in a bucket, and then we'll pull out the rocks and take a look at them. Normally what I do is I have a 5-gallon bucket where I dump all my stuff into a colander, and I just dump it right in there. Since this came with it, I feel like I should review this too. So we're going to pour it into here instead. And will they all fit? That one didn't. So they kind of fit, but I'm just going to scrap that and dump them right in there. So this comes with it. I'd throw this away and get a better colander. So I just filled this with water. I'm just going to dump it in here. Do that again. I'll put a link in the description that shows what I do with this water, how I dispose of that. So if you're wondering what to do with that, that should explain it pretty well. So let's take a look at our rocks. This is pretty well rounded. There's a bad spot right there, bad spot here, there's a crack in it. That would go back in if I was doing this myself in my own method. I'd tumble that for another week and have it look a little better than that. This one also has a bad spot right there. But these look pretty good. That could use another week or maybe more. There's a spot here. But all in all, I'd say these look okay. Of course, these are wet right now. I'll dry one off in a second, show you what it looks like dry. That one's still pretty rough around in there. And it's got some rough spots. If that's focusing. That could use probably several more weeks of time. So anyhow, these aren't perfect, but they are much more rounded than they were before. It's not looking too bad. So I'm going to rinse these one more time, and then we'll go throw them back in the tumbler, and I'll show you what to do for the next step. All right, so let's fill this up for the next stage. Put our rocks in there. There's some little tiny rocks, those can go right in also. And this just barely fills the bottom of the tumbler. So we were up about halfway when we started. Now we're, maybe a quarter of the way, third of the way at the most. There should be a lot more rocks in here in my opinion. This should be filled up like 2/3, 3/4 even full of rocks. In the book it says that they tumble better if they're crashing around inside. That might be good in the first stage when you're trying to wear down the edges and stuff, but at this point I don't think crashing around is a great idea. This did not come with any ceramic media or plastic pellets to put in here, so those are things that you normally add at this point. If not this stage, at least the next stage. But there's none of that in here, so this is way under full in my opinion, but we're going to go with it anyhow. So got about the same amount of grit as last time. Supposed to put this whole pack in there, so we will. This is 150 grit silicon carbide, which is a good choice. I usually use 220 here, or 120/220, which is about the same as 150. So, good choice for grit. I don't have any problem with that. We're supposed to fill the top of the rocks, so this time, I don't know if I tip it, the water's going to flow to the bottom and it's not going to fill it right, but I'm supposed to fill the top. So that's going to be less water this time because there's a smaller amount of rocks in there. But I'm going to do what it says and do that. So that's what we have. As for the speed, it doesn't say what speed to put it on for the second stage. First stage it says put it on speed 3, the high speed. It says for the last 2 stages to put it on the slowest speed, but it doesn't say anything about this stage. So I'm going to put it on at the second speed, since there is a second speed, and that's in between the other two. It makes sense to me, so we're going to go with that. So this is supposed to be on for 6 to 8 days. I'm going to go with the maximum number of days for each one of these stages. So I'm going to go 8 days, and we'll check back in then. All right, ready to go on to stage 3. I was surprised at how thick the slurry was after stage 2. With that barrel rolling so fast, I think it did more grinding than what I'm used to. So let's take a look at one of these dried off. Now, you really shouldn't be drying them off from here on out because if there's any grit or slurry stuck in the cracks, it can kind of dry in there and not come out real easily. So there we go. No shine yet. I wouldn't expect there to be shine yet, so there's nothing wrong with that. But these are going to go in the barrel again. We're not even really covering the bottom of the barrel at this point. There should be a lot more rocks in here in my opinion. But it is what it is. I'm just following the directions. So I'm going to fill this up just over the top of the rocks, or just to the top of the rocks. And then the step 3 grit is 600 silicon carbide. At this point, I would usually use I usually use 500, but I use aluminum oxide. So 500 or 600, that's not really that different. Silicon carbide is a little better for grinding, and aluminum oxide is better for polishing. So this is the point where I switch over to aluminum oxide for better polishing. So the directions say 6 to 8 days. I'm going to go 8 days again, and I'll see you then. Okay, we're done with stage 3 and on to stage 4, which is polish. So here are the rocks that we have at this point. Let's take that rose quartz and dry it off. And there is no shine yet, nor should there be a shine yet, so there's no problem there. So we'll put these in here. And we got to add in our polish. This is 1000 silicon carbide. This is not what I would use at all for a polish. I don't consider this a polish. I use 1000 aluminum oxide rather than silicon carbide as a pre-polish sometimes, but that's not a polish either. Polish, in my opinion, is like 1 micron, which is like 14,000 grit. So this is 1000 grit. What I consider to be polished is 14,000 grit. But I'm going to use this, and I think aluminum oxide is a better choice than silicon carbide because it just does a better job of polishing. This is more scratchy, and those little particles get rounded and just do a better job of polishing. But this is what we got, so we're throwing it in. By the way, the rocks aren't even covering the bottom of the barrel at this point. They're about half covering it. I'm going to fill this up halfway, not halfway, a little over the rocks with water. And we'll button her up, and it suggests 7 to 10 days. I'm going to go 10 days. I'm always doing the longest just to give the directions the best possible chance of working. This stage and the last stage are both done in the slowest speed of the tumbler. So it's speed 1 on the tumbler. All right, so I'll see you in 10 days. I just took the tumbler off the barrel after 8 days of rolling, so I'm going to go dump it out and see what it looks like. I'm honestly not expecting good results for reasons that I've mentioned already, but we're going to see what happens. So just give me a second, I'll be right back. All right, they're all rinsed off, and there is no shine whatsoever. So there's the rose quartz that I keep showing you. It's smooth. I can feel a little roughness right there, but most of it's pretty smooth. But it's not at all shiny. Tiger's Eye shines up very nicely. I've tumbled this stuff before. No shine whatsoever. So that's where we're at. Always be aware that when you're looking at pictures or videos of people's tumbled rocks, a surprising number of people show the finished product wet. And if you show them wet, they're going to look good. They're going to look nice and shiny. The trick is to get them to look shiny when they're not wet. So these are dry. All the rocks that I show in this, unless I'm in the process of tumbling, when I show finished rocks on this channel, they're dry and shiny when they're dry. So they have one more step here. This is done with polish, and if you bought an older National Geographic kit, that's where you ended. That would be it. So now they have this stuff called gem foam, which are just these little foam cubes, And I emailed the company and I said, what kind of abrasive is in these? And they said, there's no abrasive in them. So they're just little foam cubes. So what I'm supposed to do is make a pile of these that's about the same as this pile. I don't know, that looks pretty good. I'm trying to judge height here also. That's not all of them. And I'm supposed to put the rocks in the barrel. And this tiny amount of rocks doesn't even cover the bottom of the barrel anymore. So kind of see there, it's less than half the bottom of the barrel even covered. So I'm supposed to cover that to the top with water. I'm going to go about halfway up, since halfway up the biggest rock. And the reason I did that is because a lot of it doesn't have any rocks on it. So I'm trying to judge what to the top of the rocks would be when it doesn't even cover the bottom. Then these go in on top. And then I put the lid on, which is over there where I empty these out. And I roll this for 3 days. And it says to get a high polish or something like that. This is what I do. These gem cubes are supposed to be able to be used up to 6 times. I don't know what happens after 6 times. Since there's no polish in them, I imagine they just wear away and crumble or something. So I'm going to put the lid on, put it on for 3 more days and see if this makes any difference. I'm not holding my breath, but we'll see. They're all done, so let's take a look. It's a little hard to get off. And looks like that foam deteriorates quite a bit. It's all black in there. I thought these were just going to be clean rocks, but I guess I'm going to have to get something to rinse them off with. I'm going to go rinse these off and I'll be right back. They're all rinsed off, and these little cubes are slightly rounded off in the corners. I can see that they're wearing away. I'm surprised they turned the water as black as they did. Let's see if the rocks got any shinier. They look great wet, but rocks usually look good wet. And there is no shine at all, so I don't see what that did. But I'll dry the rest of these off and pull the camera in a little closer so you can see them up close. Okay, here's the entire batch. You can see there's not much left to it. Those black rocks we started with, there's one. Here's the other one. There might have been more, but that's all that's left. So a lot of this stuff has just tumbled away to literally nothing. Here's the rose quartz we've been checking in on. You can see it's rounded, but not shiny at all. Here's a rose quartz that I've tumbled in the past. Okay, now this was tumbled using a vibratory tumbler. So you might think that's not a fair comparison, but I'll show you one that I rotary tumbled. It's not rose quartz, but I'll show you that in a second. Here's Tiger's Eye. Not shiny. And here's Tiger's Eye that I've tumbled before. You can get this stuff very shiny. So I would say this is a failure. This is the agate that was included. There's a little bit of a shine on this. These are the only ones that came out, and this is the only one that came out good at all. Like, this is completely dull. All these other ones are. But the agate's got a little shine. Here's another little agate. Got a little bit of shine to it right there. But here's a rock that I tumbled completely in a rotary tumbler. Okay, and you can see the shine is just completely different. So that's what you can expect if you follow the directions and use the included grits. Just not very impressive. I'm not convinced that we can't get a good polish from this machine, but not using the grit that's included and following the directions that come with it. In just a minute, I'm going to tell you my list of pros and cons about this machine. But before I do that, I just wanted to tell you, don't put this on top of a table. I've had it on the floor in my basement, and it's been slowly gliding around the floor just due to the vibrations. So I'd be afraid if you put it on top of a table, it'd just fall off. When I get done with this, if you decide that you would like to buy one of these machines, I do have a link in the description. I make a very small commission if you buy it through that link, so I'd appreciate it if you did that. And I'm going to make another video with this tumbler showing how to tumble rocks successfully with it. So if you have one of these or you buy one of these, hopefully the other video will show you how you can get good shiny rocks out of it. I'm convinced this is not a bad machine. It's more the polish than anything else, I think. So my list of pros and cons. First, the pros. I like this barrel. It's the same design as the Lortone barrels, which don't leak. so I would not expect this to leak. And I like that it's made out of rubber. It makes it a little bit quieter. So good barrel. Second thing, it grinds rocks really, really fast. So if you're impatient with this going like 3 times as fast as the other tumbler does, it will really get the rocks done quickly. There's a con that goes along with that, but I'll get to that in just a second. Next, it comes with a few rocks to tumble and a little bit of grit. It's not very many rocks, it's not very much grit, but it's better than nothing, and most tumblers don't come with anything, so it's nice that those are included. I looked into the electricity used by this and the Lortone tumbler just as a comparison. With this little DC motor, this only uses 12 watts of electricity. I got that information right off the power cord, right at the plug it says that. And printed on the Lortone machine, it says that it uses 36 watts. So the Lortone uses 3 times as much electricity, and it's better to use less, so this is good. The other thing is this is just a little bit cheaper than other tumblers. It's not a lot cheaper, but if you're looking for a budget tumbler, this does come in a little cheaper. And one last good thing about it is they have good customer service and a good warranty. This has a 2-year warranty, and from what I've read, if you have any problems with it and you contact them, they'll just send you a new tumbler. And I contacted customer service to ask a couple of questions when I was making this video. The first time I think I heard back within an hour, and the second time I heard back by the next day. So I'm very impressed with that. All right, then the things I don't like so much is the motor in this. This little motor, although it doesn't use as much electricity, apparently if you overfill the barrel, it stops. The owner's manual says that you'll get an E on one of these little readouts here. If you see an E, you need to stop the tumbler. Well, the tumbler will be stopped. You need to open it up and remove some rocks. My only concern there is that if you can't fill this up, at least 2/3 full, that's not really good, just because you're not going to tumble very many rocks that way. And I think the tumbler works better if you have it a little more full. At least other tumblers do. Also, the motor apparently won't last 2 years. So it's good that they've got that 2-year warranty, because you'll probably need a replacement tumbler before 2 years. And then hopefully that one lasts you a while, and then you're on your own, I think. So this is not going to last as long as some other tumblers, but you didn't pay quite as much for it, so maybe that's okay. Back to that fast barrel speed, that does tumble the rocks really quickly, but they might get bruised up. You wouldn't want to do something like obsidian in this. Obsidian is volcanic glass, and it's very fragile. I think that would just get all chipped up. So I wish this would go a little bit slower so you could be a little more gentle on the rocks. And then that polish is probably the worst thing about this. The polish is just not good polish. It's a shame that you go through all the trouble of tumbling the rocks and then they don't even polish up because they didn't provide good polish. So that's easily rectified by just not ordering National Geographic polish when you need some more. Get some other good quality polish, and I think this will do okay. And then the last thing is, I think, you can get a 2-barrel tumbler for not a whole lot more money. So I would spring for a little more expensive tumbler. Get 2 barrels, because you're going to want the extra capacity eventually. You might want to consider that. So would I recommend this tumbler? Before I got this, I would have said definitely not. It just looked like a toy to me, but after using it, it's not all that bad. So I don't know that I'd recommend it, but if somebody was going to get it, I sure wouldn't try to talk them out of it. So it's not a half bad tumbler, much better than what I thought it was when I ordered the thing. So I was pleasantly surprised. So thanks for watching this video. Hope you learned something. Hope this was useful. If you liked it, consider giving it a thumbs up.